The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Mark Kraynak going to jump back in. He was on assignment last week out on the West Coast. As we're excited to have you in for another Saturday edition, the digital edition with the Hail Varsity YouTube show. And as always, check us out on Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter feed and find at HVarsity Radio, Facebook and Twitter with KFOR. So we're gearing up, we're huddling up, we're getting ready to launch and hit that start button here on YouTube. You and I were just saying, has Walter chimed in yet? Have we gotten called out? We always say 7:45-ish. Now, we were in the chair at 7:45 ready to go, and eyes are rolling all across Husker Nation, but we're here now. And Elijah's like, dude, has Walter said anything yet? Walter, just south of Philly, has checked in. And we love you, Walter. We appreciate all of you for checking in. We'll give you our starting five. The first five into the stream on YouTube, we will shout out. They're never on time on Saturdays. Brother, last night was great. I ended up meeting up with my wife. We went and had a giant egg and chorizo burrito. I did anyway. Ooh. With some green tomatillo sauce. Oh. I substituted the red sauce for the green sauce. And I was fading food coma-wise, but I was up late enough to see Gino Auriemma absolutely go nuclear on the sideline, and he should have, with that garbage moving screen call with 9 seconds left. Iowa, shocker, on to the national championship. This is 2 days in a row we have started with women's basketball, but it has taken the nation by storm. Final Four today. Brandon Vogel will be with us in about 10 minutes to talk all things spring football. Big week with Nebraska. We talk about the quarterback situation, hearing from Dylan Hill and hearing from Danny Kaye, Sat, Glenn Thomas, Harburg. Good stuff. Kisei dominated this week with his 3-point exhibition, and Mr. Sears, man, was just on fire last night. 2-hit complete game shutout for the Big Red. We welcome in the basketball transfer, Mark Kraynak.
Everybody else is doing it. Why not?
How are you, dude? How was being on assignment as you were out scouting last week?
It was fantastic. God bless it. It went great. How'd it go without me, guy? I missed you guys. Like, is everything okay? Are we still cool?
Yeah, we're good, man.
I don't feel like we talked, this week, like talked through it.
No, you're good. You were working. You were busy. We'll get the starting five shout out here in a little bit.
I'm glad
Elijah's slowing this down so we can really talk about our feelings for a second.
Yeah, there is that little bit of just like, why does Mark get to go to California while Schmidt and Elijah are stuck in Nebraska?
Right. Right.
So we definitely had to work that just a little bit.
And I see you wearing the California shirt today.
Yeah, this was an honor of you. This was more of an homage.
He's lying. It's clean.
Yeah. Okay, now it's all coming out.
No, I had this morning was all about getting my umpiring gear ready for this afternoon, so I did not think about I'm wearing 3 different shades of gray, which is usually not what you want in your fashion. That's a bit of a faux pas. I mean, the grays are obviously better, but 3 different shades of gray. It's one thing to have 2 different shades of gray. Whenever I look like 3 different shades here, I'm just all sorts of gray. For those that are watching along, they can see it's my NBA Finals hat with my California Republic shirt and my gray sweatpants. So it's 3 different shades of gray, and I think it's a rough look.
That NBA Finals hat has like David Robinson late 90s vibes. It's all over it.
The only thing
Which is
missing
crazy
is
'cause
a
it's-
little fluorescent green to it.
I'm not gonna take my hat off because
Yeah.
my hair's looking crazy. It's
What year is it? No, I can't see it.
2023. They brought back the old script finals logo, so I had to get myself the Nuggets in the finals hat. It's awesome because it does have that 90s feel. Yeah.
All good. So we'll do our starting five shout out right now. Guest list, of course, Brandon Vogel in about 5 minutes. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, will join us at 8:30. Special guest a little bit after 9 as we'll extend the show past our normal 9:15 run time or so. Saturdays are just kind of hurry up offense. You draw it up in the dirt and away we go. We love it. Garth Glissman going to be with us, former Husker standout, current number 2 man in the SEC, and longtime alum of the Saturday morning show, Kraynak, because you and I have been doing this thing for 400 years, and I love it. And what's cool is Garth's down at the Final Four. He's embedded with Alabama as the SEC commissioner, the basketball commissioner. We'll talk to him about this tug of war going on with this 80-team Super League, where the SEC stands on that. We'll talk to Garth a little bit about the athletic director job because every major media outlet had Garth as a top 3 candidate for the Nebraska AD job. And also just see how G Unit's doing and vibing down there at the Final Four, man. Just dear friend and pretty awesome.
Are they 1 hour behind us right now or 2 hours behind us?
2.
So he's showing up early Phoenix time.
Yeah,
I mean,
he is. That's okay.
He's showing up before we are technically. It's 7:45 local start time here. He showed up at 7:20. So
Ish, yeah.
let it be known who's more of a professional.
Yeah, Garth is good stuff. We're excited to have G Unit on with us. So more to the point as we get our shout outs. Justin was in first. Justin, appreciate you as we shout out our starting 5. Rick says hello. NASCAR Eric in at 3rd. Moonbot 7. Good to have you in, Moonbot. Appreciate you checking in during the week as always. Weston says hello. That is good to hear from Weston. Walter, we've highlighted. Big Al says LFG scrimmage today as spring football never sleeps. Should be a big time news and notes day, at least from Rule a little bit later on today. Steve says hello. And Steven, you're right. Again, I was here before the link was open. It happens. James, fair point. We're touching you digitally. Sorry, bro, about that. Yeah, there it is. Tuck, you never know when they show up on Saturdays. We're good. Cliff, good to spend time with you. Sorry I'm late. Cliff had a booty call. Good work, Cliff.
Cliff, in all seriousness, says he's on the way back to Nebraska, which is great news.
That is awesome. And Buck 380 checks in and says hello. More of your comments coming up, and all good to be here. So that's what's up. The other thing, too, that happened this weekend, there was a little nice NIL gathering with the good folks from 1890 down in the desert right in front of the Final Four. Elijah, you've got some more info on that, brother, but it some who's who and the old offering plates being passed around for Big Daddy's war chest.
And not just, I mean, I think when you say Big Daddy, I think you're referring to Matt Rule, which is an interesting way to put it.
Big Daddy is in Nebraska, the program.
They have a special relationship.
I'm gonna go with Schmidt refers to Matt Rule as Big Daddy now. I kind of like that.
That needs to be Matt Rule approved.
You're the one who said it, not me.
And then when he comes on the show, you can be like, joined now by Big Daddy, right?
He'll just stare at me and shake his head and whatever.
Considering Fred, his wife, Kevin McHale were the ones that are down to that 1890 event down in Phoenix. They're talking Husker basketball. The number I heard thrown around from the event was $3 million is the yearly NIL fund that Fred Hoiberg would like to have. So that's the number I was told from this 1890 event. So I think, can we run with that? Maybe.
Brandon Vogel's adjusting his glasses. He's scratching a check for.
It's a number that makes sense.
Husker Hoops.
Like $3 million for Husker Hoops. We hear, I think, as we welcome Brandon Vogel into the show, we hear $10 to $15 million per season for Husker football. I think $3 million sounds about like a reasonable number for Fred Hoiberg and the basketball program to go get a couple of big name transfers, take care of the guys that you have. Maybe not big name transfers, because you think of the big name guys in the portal. We've heard $1 million a year thrown around for some of those guys, which would be on the upper end for Nebraska. But Brandon, how does that strike you? $3 million a year for the Husker basketball program, NIL.
Seems like a great goal. seems
for all of us.
Well, right. And yeah, I think you're right, Elijah. I think football's probably aims for 10 to be competitive. I mean, you look at your Ohio States. Thank you, Rick. You look at your Ohio States, et cetera, et cetera. I'm guessing they're over that, maybe significantly, but I don't know if Nebraska's there on either front. I mean, who knows? Like, NIL across the country is like all behind such closed doors. It's hard to tell, but I don't know. I'm just like, yeah, sure. I bet with $3 million, you could probably do what you want with a basketball offseason and your roster. But like, where's that money going to come from? I mean, when this was just an idea that like athletes were going to court to basically win for themselves, you know, we all thought it was going to be State Farm out here doing this. And if you're Kate and Clark, they will. But what about everybody else? What about the guy you're just trying to get out of the portal? It's a bizarre system.
Here's what I wonder. So let's just look at numbers and presume that Trev and some of the who's who of college football are correct when you need a separate ledger number moving forward. And that number is what, $10 to $20 million. Let's say that's the range for football annually for your NIL. You need $20 million a year to be a player as a separate expense. And you look at Nebraska and where they're at. I mean, you've got folks that have given till it hurts to this program for a long time. And I think you have that taste of winning again. The floodgates can open up again. You look at some of the major projects that went forward, and, you know, Bill Byrne was kind of the dude who did that. You had to have a breakthrough, awesome, this is sustainable proof moment. Van Horn did that with baseball. Here comes Haymarket. You have been really good in football for a while. You break through and go 60-3, and then what follows? Those projects in the late 90s with the West Stadium expansion, Kraynak, where you have your seats in the East Stadium. You weren't riding as high, but you had Big Ten money coming in. We know, and we've beat to death the South Stadium project. So, and then with basketball, you knew it was time to flip something, and you got a really nice downtown area with the rail yard, and then PBA, and then you know you're into the tournament, right? And you've waited 10 years between tournament runs, but maybe that becomes a more of a consistent thing with Fred and company. That's their goal anyway. So it's not a situation where it's just blind giving. There's been some winning, and then you've had the build following. And right now, I think you're on the verge for a lot of sports to have that same type of follow through. It just feels good momentum wise, but you're going to need to carve out money for players. You're going to need to carve out money and set it aside for what the going price of a quarterback is, a left tackle. You have that initial dollar amount to get him in the door, but I love what Michigan did. And that is one more year. You have a one more year fund. So I just wonder what percentage of that $20 million per se goes into the one more year fund versus the get him here fund.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can break it up, and I think you hit on a good point. Is for so long, for these projects that you need funded, however you choose to do it, it did sort of follow like strike while the iron is hot. What's been different about Nebraska's most of its recent ventures is, in terms of football, certainly, like the iron has not been hot, but you still got sparkling new facilities. And you still, when it was time to fire a coach 2 weeks before it would have been 50% off to do that, you did that. So, I mean, it's interesting to think about, like,
Trev didn't go in on the sale price, did he?
No,
once.
You could pay full freight. And
So good.
does that factor into NIL giving at Nebraska now? Or if it does, or if it doesn't, I don't know. Going forward, if say football does start to win some games, does it help you because you've already kind of cleared those hurdles? It's like, well, we paid the bills even when things weren't so good, so we don't have to build a new facility now, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe more money can go to NIL. Who knows?
Brandon Vogel with us on the Hail Varsity Weekend Edition as we talk NIL and Huskers. And is there going to be a cap anytime soon? Has there been any meaningful, discussion about that to where it's on the horizon? I know a lot of people feel like there needs to be one because right now it is just pure free market, and that's how no sports leagues anywhere really operate. Right?
Guys want to go. Guys want to come back to college.
Yeah, right. Like somehow people have found a way to regulate all that. But there's just none right now, essentially. Is there one on the horizon, Brandon, that you've heard of? If so, in any kind of descriptors of it? And I'm not expecting that there is.
I don't think so, because I think legally, I think it would be very hard to do. I mean, the players had to sue to even say, you're depriving us of all of our NIL rights. So to try and cap it, seems like you're right back to the same problem, just at a little higher up the ladder. I mean, I think the only way to effectively cap it is you make all of these athletes employees, and maybe not in all sports, maybe just some of the biggest ones, which we have heard proposals for that, but we'll see. I mean, there's just I think the issue for the NCAA and NIL regulation at this point is kind of, unless they're ready to make them employees, every other avenue you turn down seems to have an antitrust lawsuit waiting at the end of the street.
It's going to be fascinating because it's really you look at Ohio State, you look at what their foundation, what their money raising capabilities are, and Alabama and Texas A&M. It's difficult to imagine that it'll continue in a way that truly it's always been that way to some degree, but there are enough things to kind of level out the playing field otherwise to make it possible. But if it's just one of those things where, if you got $100 million a year, you get all the best players and that's all there is to it, and everybody else doesn't. And I don't know.
I want to ask this, Vogues. Do you think there's a point where you're in such a good spot making money as a player that even though you're not playing, you're going to stick it out and wait your turn versus just jumping into the portal? Because you can't get as much going somewhere else. How much do you value the opportunity to play, maybe even if you're not ready? And I throw that out there because I look at the Texas situation with Arch Manning.
Wait, yeah, that's a really good question, and I think he's certainly unique in that regard. In that, he's been famous, quote unquote. Somebody people were going to know about from the time he started playing competitive football. So yeah, I'm guessing he gets pretty good chunk of NIL, and for a guy like that, you can sit and you do have to weigh it. And, this comes into like you're talking about 19-year-old kids. I certainly didn't have any idea of like, for me, it was like scholarships of like what the actual value of that was and what it would mean for me later in life. So I get it when guys are like, yeah, I'm making $2 million here maybe, but I'd really like to play. And the other problem is like we hear horror stories of like these guys just getting promised the world once they hop in the portal, even though technically you're not supposed to be able to do that. They certainly are. So yeah, Quinn Ewers is another good example. So I think in theory, like you could see it. I think the issue right now in terms of football, like is your second, I don't think your second string guys, whether they're, dudes in the trenches or out on the edge in skill positions where you'd expect like maybe they have a little more brand recognition. Like, I don't think they're making that much. Is there a point where you could get the money well enough where it's like, yeah, I'm going to stay? Maybe, but I think we're a ways away from that.
Ross brings up a good point here on his very short comment, 4 words. It says you can't cap NIL. And like technically, totally know what you're saying, because you're talking about somebody's individual name, image, and likeness, and there is no cap on that, no matter what league you're in or whatever. I guess what I'm talking about is compensating players, period. And right now, right now, NIL is the loophole by which players are basically getting paid. It's not in the spirit of what name, image, and likeness actually is. Right, which is using your name, image, or likeness to peddle a product, essentially. Like that's what it's supposed to be for. But it's obviously been twisted in a way that's never happened before, like on the planet anywhere. So I guess that's more what it is do we think? And you mentioned it, Brandon, becoming employees. That would change it quite a bit, because then it's not about quote unquote NIL. It's just about compensation of players, period. And that's a way to perhaps level the playing field versus now every individual on earth can get as much money as they want, and they do so through their college affiliation. Like that's where we're at this second, and that's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that would be closer to what we all thought NIL would be in theory, which would be, people being paid for their fair market value in terms of name, image, and likeness. Which is not what's happening now. Like sometimes it is. Caitlin Clark is like at the very, very top. It happens. But for everybody else, it's just become like a kind of legal way to entice players to come to your university for the most part at a lot of these places. So that's kind of the key question, and it's unanswerable in theory, I think, but it'd be interesting to see if there was a base salary for let's just say football, basketball, et cetera, $50,000 a year, 75, who knows what it would be. Would that keep most players? Would that be enough to have most players be like, you know what? I'm not going to do the NIL thing. I'm not going to do the Instagram post because I just don't want to mess with it. Like, yeah, I'm on a full ride. I have very few expenses. And now I don't want to take that for granted because everybody's situation is different, of course. But in theory, your average college student, that's on a full ride and is making $50,000 to $75,000. Is that enough for them to say, I'm not going to, maybe I'll do a local commercial if it's convenient and easy to do, instead of having to like go out there and I know a lot of these things come to them, but kind of keep pursuing the NIL piece of it.
Cliff chimes in. He says, just keep the federal government away from it. Cliff. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. We don't need the congressional folks to get their
Isn't that interesting
mitts on it.
We're not going political here, but I still think everyone could say amen to that one.
Yeah. And Ross came back with, NFL players make outside endorsement money from their contract, of course, right? Mm-hmm. And what's weird, though, is imagine the NFL being run only by that. And that's essentially what's happening in college football is you're being run by endorsement deals that aren't even really endorsements. Like you have collectives. Think about a collective. What? That's not a product. That's not an idiot. They're raising money from you, from me, from people. just to be able to have money to fund through quote unquote NIL.
Well, think about it. Like Dylan Raiola,
bizarre.
I'm sure has made money since he's arrived at Nebraska. I'm sure he's received checks from the NIL folks. Have you seen Dylan Raiola in any ads? Have you seen Dylan Raiola peddling any products?
Which I think they can get away with loophole-wise, and this isn't just on 1890. This is collectives everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's like they can get away with just like appearances at a hospital or appearance at your event or a speech or something like that, to where it doesn't have to be, hey, I'm Dylan Raiola, and this is why you should eat Taco Bell. Like, it doesn't have to be that. But it's bizarre that the power structure is being run by that. Being run by individual donations from boosters and all. And so if you start paying the players like true compensation, employees or even contractors, whatever, then I think the theory is most of that money goes towards that sort of legitimate cause. And then all that's left over really is advertisers working directly with players for NIL as I think originally intended.
Well, let's just take care of it for Dylan, and we'll all chip in and buy an old bread truck and turn it into a Hawaiian Ice mobile food truck.
Oh, those things bank.
I know. They're awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. Brandon Vogel's
some sugar syrup.
What flavor he wants right now.
Try blue tornado.
You gotta go tiger blood, because I've never actually figured out what tiger blood is, but every Hawaiian Ice has it. So
is that the red fruity punch deal?
Well,
could be. You could tell me it's anything. I've had it a couple of times, and I've never been able to discern.
You do the adult Hawaiian Ice stand where you have vodka or rum as a side choice as well.
Yeah, I think the dominant flavor of tiger blood is sugar.
When does it?
Yeah.
Well, it's got a definite orangey flair to it. It's like a fruit punch, I think, but it's got like an extra bit of oranginess to it. Yeah, I can't put my finger on what the flavor is either, Brandon. But it's delicious.
You got to go blue. You got to go that turquoise color, whatever it is,
like the ocean water type.
When does it qualify as punch? By the way, juice. You know what I'm saying? Because most juices are mixes of fruits. Like, what qualifies as punch? Kind of like with nuts, where it's like, well, these are the extra fancy ones. And like ketchup, there's the fancy ketchup, and then there's the non-fancy ketchup.
I've always defined punch as a mix of 3 or more flavors. Maybe I'm wrong there.
That's well done.
Is that what it is?
Can we stay on this flavor topic and get to the offense?
Schmidt is sick and tired of this.
I opened the door, and someone needs to backhand me. Flavor of offense. It didn't get to be air raid, but Vogues, are we going to see empty sets on 3rd and short, brother? With Nebraska? Run game versus pass game. Satterfield spoke, and a little bit of blowback online. And listen, he's right. You need to be able to throw the football. Our friend Mitch Sherman's tweet, I point to that, was this Thursday or Friday, but Nebraska, to Satterfield's point, had a game tied or a chance to take the lead 4 times last year, and you threw the football. We remember Iowa, right? We remember the interceptions that happened. Of course, Maryland, Wisconsin. I mean, it was heartbreak. Nebraska's got to be able to make a play throwing the football, or just be good enough inside the 10 to slam it down somebody's throat and score that route. So, but based on kind of what we're hearing, wind or no wind, brother, you've got some arm talent down there that's going to be able to make some routine plays, going to make some special plays with those splash plays, those big gainer plays. But man, I think we could see a whole different looking, from an execution standpoint, offense in the passing game. You could see a really well-balanced rushing attack with the passing game, and this could move forward quicker than we think. I'm not trying to overhype, but you've got some options down there. But it was good to hear from Sat and Thomas and the quarterbacks this week. And just imagine what Nebraska football might be next year with that number 1 defense you wrote about in Connor Reed this week. You pair it with an offense that's more than competent moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the key to having a defense that, defensive SP plus last year, Nebraska ranked 6th. You have an average
Think about
offense.
that. Number 6 in the country.
Yeah, and their offense ranked 125th, something like that, and special teams was 105th. You can see it on Counter Read. It's Thursday's newsletter. If you want to look at it, there's a pretty handsome chart, if I do say so myself, that kind of shows the difference there of all the other teams that were in the top 10 defensively. Very good point. All the other teams had more support than Nebraska that were in the top 10 defensively. So it kind of underscores what Tony White and that group were able to do last year. Now they get a little help offensively, get a little help special teams wise. You might really be cooking with something. I know what Satterfield said this week. I kind of read his comment as more, we need to throw the ball better than we need to throw the ball more. I had my stats spreadsheet happen to be open. Nebraska ran the ball 61% of the time last year. That's not factoring in. That's accounting for sacks properly. That 5th nationally. I would be that number. I don't think, even if they come out and the receivers are what we think they could be, Thomas Fidone, continues to improve upon his immense talent that's always been there, just had to deal with some injuries, and the quarterback, if it's Raiola or somebody else, is better than a year ago. I still don't think that run rate drops below 55%. Like, that's how they want to play. Like, at most they become 55% run is kind of balanced. We talk about 50-50, but it almost never gets there just with the way football works. So I would be surprised if the run attempts dropped drastically. That said, some of that will depend on what they think they have in the running back group too.
What was Nebraska completion percentage wise last year as a team too? Wasn't it like
52, 53?
52. Fair. So 48% of the time that they passed, the clock stopped too. That doesn't help. That doesn't help a defense either. And Brandon, looking at that table, you have the top 10 listed out by SP plus defense, right? Yeah. And that takes into account, scrolling up, I just don't want to mess anything up there. So that if I'm not mistaken, that's the success rate, explosiveness, field position, points per play, everything that's in the table above, right?
Not quite everything that's in the table above. SP plus is, the two primary components. The S is success rate, and the P is for explosiveness. It's opponent adjusted. It's kind of an overall power rating. The first table that I put in there was just trying to show some of the individual elements in general, which you can see from that table alone. Nebraska defensively, pretty good. Top 25, I think, in everything except for field position, which is a big one. You fix that. That helps your defense quite a bit. And then plays defended per game, which Nebraska was about average there, which, goes to they ran the ball a lot. They, weren't in a hurry. They did, I think, actually a pretty good job protecting their defense, given the lack of consistent success they had on offense. You get better on offense, you can probably pull that plays defended number down even more. And just the less time your defense is on the field, the better you are, unless they're giving up 75-yard touchdowns every play, of course.
Brandon, continue, Mark.
Real quick. Sorry, Elijah. Is there something is there something statistically to what Terrence Knighton was alluding to, the defensive line coach, when he's like, hey, we got to get off the field, right? And of course, every defense does. But do we know statistically if Nebraska actually, how do we even define getting off the field, right? Did Nebraska especially struggle with, say, fourth quarter drives, maybe more so than other teams? Do we know?
They struggled with 3rd and 8.
Well, right. And that's what it feels like as a fan and as a close follower. But I'm just saying, compared to the rest of college football, was it that much different, better, worse? That's where I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's the 3rd down that jumps out the most. And it's that, for as good as Nebraska was defensively in so many of these categories, they kind of lagged in 3rd down for whatever whatever reason that may have been. So, and I know, Mark, you've mentioned this pretty often. It's like, well, great. Like, yeah, just go fix third down. Well, how do you do that? It's kind of just, it's kind of just being better overall, being a little bit better on first and second down. Knighton also mentioned takeaways, which are, of course, like, we had the comment earlier, like, we need to not be talking about turnovers and takeaways and giveaways. I agree. Like, if you're a team that's just even in that, and it's like, okay, fine, we can forget it. It's not a point of conversation. Because if you go way positive in the takeaways department, you're going to have probably a pretty special season, unless you're just truly awful in the other two phases. Problem is like, well, how do you do that? Because we see, wrote about it last fall, Nebraska's kind of internal boards, which I got from watching one of their very good documentaries. They do a really good job with those. The number was like 40 takeaways or something like that, 30 maybe. I was like, sure, that'd be great. Like, that's a really high number. And you set the goals and you aim really high. It's just, it's hard to control that consistently. So if Nebraska has a ton of takeaways this year and gets better on third down, they probably will improve pretty drastically. And stop the run. I think that was Knighton's third one. And that's the one that's kind of a little bit more steady, a little bit more bedrock to me. Like, you can kind of make a point to be like, we're going to be real tough against the run. And it largely comes down to effort and physicality for the most part, making sure you hit your run fits. But, go ahead.
Brandon, maybe we'll get you out on this. I just did some quick math in my head. If we're talking takeaways in that 35 to 40 range, which is a lot, but like as you laid out, okay, I have lofty goals. Some quick math, 12 games a year, 3 takeaways, 36 is chasing 3 about takeaways and not about points?
Dude, real quick, I'm sorry to interject, but this is crazy you bring this up because Walter posted earlier the turnover margin for all of the Big Ten.
I'll go pull that up.
To a T, look at that. Michigan plus 19, Nebraska minus 17. That's 36. That's 3 a game. Sorry, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have to go back and find that post because I don't remember exactly what the number is, but I think it was more than 30. And so you'd be looking at 3 takeaways a game, which there's got to be like maybe 1 or 2 teams that actually gets that. Yeah. The most for any team last year was 28 in terms
turnovers?
Of just pure
really
takeaways. Pure takeaways. Bowling Green led the country. I'm surprised you guys didn't remember that.
No. Yeah,
but
to be fair, Michigan had 27.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
27 in what? 15 games? Which is part of it too. Like most teams, if you average more than 2 takeaways a game, like you're really cooking with fire. I can't remember what Nebraska was at last year. Close to 1, I think. And maybe not even that high. So, again, like it's the stuff you put on your walls internally in the locker room and stuff. And that's what you shoot for. I've never found evidence that you have that much control over it. I mean, the Bo Pelini year, like to get 3 a game, that would be the equivalent of that 2003 season when I think they had over 40 takeaways.
Right.
Something crazy like that.
Well, Bullock's had 12 picks himself. And then they had a killer defensive line. I mean, they were good. Brandon Vogel, counterread.com. Vogues, tell folks how they can subscribe, get signed up, what you and Aaron Sorensen do each week.
Yeah, twice weekly newsletter on Substack, which we kind of went into that a little bit blind, but I've been really happy with the format there. I think it's very reader and user friendly if you get involved and get on the Substack app. So that's what we're doing. We also do a couple of free pieces a week. Some of the tables we're talking about here. Spring football is good because you listen to these coaches and it kind of provides like an idea or a question to potentially answer. So when Tony White says, we want to be the number 1 defense in the country, that's usually where I jump in, whether people want me to or not, and say, well, let's think about what that would look like and what that would take. So things like that. We hit on a lot of other sports over the course of the 5-6 months that we've been doing this. So it's a pretty, I think, well-rounded approach to Nebraska athletics. And, there's so much to talk about. We really try not to monopolize people's time too much. So shows up right to your inbox. You can check it out for free. We'd love it if you become a paid subscriber. But nothing to start to give it a try. So hop on over to counterread.com if you're interested.
Vogues, enjoy your weekend, bud. Awesome stuff. Thanks for chatting this morning.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Brandon. There he is, Brandon Vogel with us. We'll check in with Garth Glissman down at the Final Four here in about an hour, a little less than. The Iron Horse is with us. Gary Sharp. Sharpie, what's in that coffee cup? Good morning.
Just regular cinnamon roll flavored coffee.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. What do you mean? Ooh.
Well,
it's really
okay.
good.
How
It's
can
really,
cinnamon?
really good.
Because coffee's not supposed. You're not supposed to go flavored.
How
man.
can
you gotta
cinnamon
go, like,
roll
single origin.
flavored coffee be regular? That's the most irregular thing I've ever heard.
Okay.
What he meant by regular is there's no ice, there's no cream. It's just black flavored coffee, correct?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. My other choices are, let's see, I have a really good blueberry coffee.
Never tried that.
No, that sounds fantastic, actually.
No,
No, the fruitiness, don't sleep. It's like there's some light roasts that have some blueberry notes in them. It's
The lighter the roast, the
Well,
more
right, because it's
more
natural.
power you
You're
get.
not. You're not actually mixing chemical syrups and baking it into the stuff, right?
I do like hazelnuts money.
Yeah, I mean, like mix it up, Mark. I mean,
Is this
live a
a
little life here. As
I
you
didn't
get
know I
a
had the
little older,
pumpkin. I didn't know I had the pumpkin spice crew here today.
You know?
You
No,
guys are
I hate pumpkin. All things pumpkin.
So basic.
No, and instead of running a regular screen, run a bubble screen.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna talk, Gary. We're gonna meet at Roast. I know you're in the Sarman area. We're gonna meet at Roast. I'm gonna educate you on some of the finer points of coffee that Elijah just alluded to. That hey, you just don't know.
See,
And so that's
I'm a
leading to
coffee
cinnamon roll
snob.
coffee.
Mark, I'm a coffee snob.
Same.
I can say, hey, if you like your flavored roasts, get down with your flavored roast. That's all that
If you're
really
a-
matters. If you like it, that's
Kraynak,
all
you
that
still
really
do the
matters.
pour over, dude, don't you?
Yeah.
I prefer it. I'm just saying, Elijah. That's not. I think you're being too lenient. You can't be a true coffee snob if you allow that crap. This is kind of what I'm getting at.
Wow. But
Yeah.
the smell it gives off in my house, it's glorious.
Fair.
Yeah.
Sharpie, you do whatever the hell you want.
No, thank you, Schmitty. Let's just you and I talk today.
Gary, how about this? You talked about you can run the old bubble screen. What is the bubble screen of the coffee world? Or maybe the swing pass. Let's go there. What's the swing pass of the coffee world?
I would probably say
Sanka.
now. You know what? There's a lot of like not only the cinnamon rolls, but there's like Dunkin' has a line of like the glazed donut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, I just realized the coffee mug that I'm drinking from. I apologize because there is something on this coffee mug. This is a coffee mug that a listener sent to me that is the Bo Pelini speech.
Really?
Fair weather.
Oh my God. That is so good. That is so good. Now, did this listener just do a little extra arts and craft time? And
Okay.
how would you?
So
I'm going
it's
to read
not,
that dramatically.
Yeah. Can we do it in the Morgan Freeman voice this morning?
Hey, we are not on the air. That actually might be a little far for YouTube. YouTube
That is
wouldn't like
good.
that. I was gonna say we do have an extra threshold we can cross, not being on the air. That being said, YouTube would still be very, very upset with us.
That is
on
the
that
most
one.
glorious piece of Husker fandom I have seen in my life.
That is
So-
a deep track.
That
it's,
is so good.
It was about 2 years ago. It just randomly showed up at the station. Did not have a return address or nothing. I opened it up and I first looked at it and I was like, somebody just sent me a coffee cup. And then I started to read it and I'm like, that's the Bo Pelini exit speech on the coffee mug.
So that was the one that he got.
Is this
caught
Ohio
on
State or
tape.
is this North Star?
Yeah.
This is
No,
Ohio
this
State.
is
Ohio State.
This is the no. This is actually the Ohio State after
Yeah.
the leaked
Got it.
audio.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which
Wow.
by the way, is that is that still open? I mean, it kind of came and went, and it lingered out there, and some people may have lost their jobs because of it. But did we just leave that story alone? Because that is of the last decade, and that's now that's
an unsolved mystery. Who leaked?
Yeah. Of all the things that have gone on in Nebraska, shows you how crazy things have been since then. That story. Remember the day that Deadspin released it? It was gold for sports talk radio.
Yes, it was.
That thing, all the wild stories that followed, that story got pushed way back.
Oh, wow. That was incredible. And that's incredible to turn that into a mug, which tells you everything you need to know about Nebraska fandom. Like
Sharpie, in your inner workings with the network in your career, I've always wondered how the hell does something like that even get out? And I know where we're at technology wise.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy.
You just roll tape and then
you're recording and you hear it and you're like, what the? I got to go back and listen to that. And then it dawns on you that you have it recorded. It's probably pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in that situation as a coach, you're not thinking that either audio is being recorded or that somebody would release that to put you in a bad light.
Right. The Bill O'Reilly, Chris Berman moments, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, if you're a head coach, you just probably shouldn't say things like that about your fans. You just probably shouldn't. Shouldn't.
I mean,
or if you do, expect blowback.
I mean, Bo had a problem with people recording audio.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah, he really did. This dude was caught on audio so many times. No, yeah, it was North Star. It was also Texas. Remember Texas?
Yeah.
Just
think if somebody would have recorded video when him and his brother showed up at the old hotel in downtown Lincoln before the Texas game.
Oh, that's legendary as well.
Right, because you had a 2-on-1.
God, Rule is boring.
That is hilarious.
All he does is hang out with Willie C on a Friday.
Now, on one note about Matt Rule, who he's not the guy that's going to be doing all that kind of stuff. There is something to be said, and I don't know if this was told to him when he took over or he just quickly found out. The loose lips or the information that happens behind closed doors is super limited in a year plus under Matt Rule, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, there's probably not a lot of drama. Yeah, we don't hear a lot of.
No, they don't. That's probably why, Mark. There's not a lot of drama in this program. Like everybody communicates. They know what their role is. Nobody is like backbiting against each other or anything like that. They don't have vendettas. So you don't really have, hey, give me some juicy details. I mean, we all went through revisiting the former head coach and like, oh, you remember that? Oh, you remember that? How come he didn't talk about that? Matt Rule hasn't really had anything like that. And that's probably a good thing for where we have been at Nebraska. You can just focus on playing football.
Before this conversation gets too serious, which we're going to come back to this really fast here.
I'm leaving.
While Gary's plugging his coffee mug, let me plug the Hail Varsity Radio coffee mug, which is available on Hurrdat.com. You can get yourself a mug. Support Hail Varsity Radio. Again, that's Hurrdatsports.com. I got the image pulled up for those watching us on stream.
Good work.
It's a beautiful coffee mug.
How about the zip up? How about the quarter zip or the baby blue sweatshirt?
I just have the coffee cup pulled up for now, but I can also pull those up at some point in time. There's plenty of merch options available. Again, Hurrdatsports.com. Support Hail Varsity Radio. Support your favorite radio show, I should say. And also, the best way to start your Saturday morning, the Hail Varsity Radio coffee mug. There's the shout out for the day. There's the plug. Cross that one off the list. We can go back to football.
Well, Elijah wants his 15%. I love it.
Walter dumping cold water. I don't drink coffee. You can throw whiskey in there,
You
Walter.
GD guys are never on time, and I don't drink coffee. I love it, Walter. Appreciate it. Sharpie, a lot of places to go this morning. And we were talking a little bit with Vogues about that balanced offensive look. But what are you hearing? What are you thinking here? I know scrimmage this morning likely for Nebraska, but the topic has been the quarterbacks, and Nebraska is at what point here, in your opinion, talent-wise in this offense with the quarterback? They have three options. They're working through it. what's the reality of that here as we look towards the fall? I mean, how much can this offense be a shot in the arm, comparatively speaking?
So they won't be having a scrimmage today. They may be doing some 11 on 11, but what we think of as scrimmage will not be happening today. And I think a little bit has to do with you've got all the coaches in town. So you've got, a lot of eyeballs on there.
The high school coaches for the clinic. Right?
Well, Bill Belichick too last night.
Yeah. So I don't think they wanted their quarterbacks. That's their first go around because, a lot of people watch that coaches clinic practice and they share thoughts. So they may have some 11 on 11 today, but it will not be what we consider a scrimmage, and Rule will talk afterwards. So this is what I'm hearing about the offense. And well, let me ask you this before we start, because I brought this up on my show yesterday. All of us have been around Nebraska football either for a long time or Elijah has been in it, and so he gets it. Is we hype the heck out of Harrison Beck and Thunder Collins. Dylan Raiola has boots on the ground, is in practice, but he's the highest recruit. He comes along at the right time for Nebraska. He could be that guy to change the program. But am I crazy to think there is not as much hype around Dylan Raiola when it would be fair to hype him through the moon? Is that a sign that we've all learned our lesson?
I think we've learned our lesson from a wait and see standpoint, but also you're going 180 from a year ago. A year ago, it was the Sims show, right? And there was quite a bit of hype all right, this is what he'll become under a better supporting cast versus what he did at Georgia Tech. Well, that didn't come to fruition. So I think there's been an effort to just go to work, keep grinding versus let's slap each other on the back. So I think it's from the football program moving forward, they've just decided to dial back the outward hype and wow. They were just working. That's kind of been the message.
They do make it a point, whether it be the head coach is OC or other coaches, you don't mention one quarterback without mentioning the other two.
Yeah.
And so that's a good move because then you just let it play out, and then you don't have to answer those questions, and it's pretty clear who is the number one guy. In terms of how the offense looks, he's the real deal. Now, he's going to have to adjust to the speed of the game, and the game might not slow down for him until, week 2, third quarter, something like that. That's where an OC and a position coach can help you. But he's got a big boy arm. And I was told there was earlier this week in practice, and they're in the elements. And it's important when you're playing in Memorial Stadium in the month of November. Mark can tell you this. He sits up in the 600 level. That wind can be a beast. But you got to throw the football at some point. And he just with ease almost flicks it down the field 30 to 40 yards without effort, into the wind, into the elements, with people in his face. And people looked around and went, that's what we knew we were getting. And the other thing that with Dylan and even Danny Kaelin, is this will be a big element this year, is just the simple play and pitch and catch, where I can take a snap and I can turn to my left, I can turn to my right, and it might only be a little 6-yard. It doesn't need to be a bullet. It just needs to be a toss. And they're able to complete those passes. So the ball is out of the quarterback's hands. It's in the running back or the wide receiver's hands. They've got space because they've schemed it up with their blocking. And so all of a sudden it's on the pass catcher then to go to work. They would like to get to the point where if it's 3rd down and 4, which we used to think was just running the football, it now seems to be you throw the football, that they don't need the only way to complete that down and to get a first down is you got to be 10 to 15 yards downfield because we can't throw anything underneath because we just simply can't play pitch and catch. And that's something they've seen that is going to add to this offense. The rest of the offense, the wide receivers are really good. They're deep. They all look different. No one looks the same. They've got guys that can stretch the field. They've got guys that are good pass catchers, that got good hands in space and can turn up field, or guys that run routes precisely. That's a big thing that I've been told that has changed is guys are more into their craft. They're more tied in with Garrett McGuire. So they're running routes like they're supposed to. And also, guys, they're going to be better because they got a quarterback that can throw them a catchable football. The running game is still a work in progress. The offensive line is going to be okay. So, the offense is moving along is what I've heard through 2 weeks. But, boy, they might have the quarterback that can unlock a couple of things in this offense. But most importantly, make players around them better. I will go back to something Rule said kind of on the side and just a conversation in the winter. We have more guys that can help us win games than we have guys that can lose games for us. And I think they've started to accumulate that on offense, and on defense, we know that they have a lot more guys that can help you win.
Well, and that's what you're ask your quarterback to do. Just don't go lose us the game. Don't put it on them to have to go do everything all the time. Have a run game, have an option, make it a simple pass, to your point, Gary, where you're just playing catch and you're just moving the chains, or you're staying on schedule on first down. So it's 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5.
Let me ask the question. When was the last time Nebraska had a quarterback that you felt confident in, that you're down 3, 2.5 minutes left, you feel confident to go put the ball in their hands, that they're going to go tie or win this football game?
I go Tommy Armstrong. He did it, but I thought he's enough of an athlete to make a play. He had enough of a gunslinger mentality. Didn't always happen, but there was a shot it would happen.
I might go back a little bit further, like consistently. I'm listening to you, Schmidt, about TA. I would say Joe Gans.
Yeah.
That's who comes to mind too. Yeah. Huh. Now, how about the reports coming out too about the receivers, where it appears that the names that come up the most, Jamal Banks, Demetrius Bell, those are kind of the two. None of those guys caught a single pass for Nebraska last year. What does that mean for guys like Jalen Lloyd, Malachi Coleman? Even got his name's escaping me. Even the Creighton Prep kid,
Bullock.
Thank you. Even guys like that, or the tight ends, or anyone else. Do you feel the same, Gary, that those are the two, like Demetrius Bell going from 0 catches to being one of the top guys from a red shirt? Just it's a little abnormal.
So there's 3 guys that have gotten a lot of attention. Their names have been mentioned a lot in spring. Now Demetrius Bell has been mentioned for a while. You go back to when he was redshirting last year. His name has been mentioned by his teammates or his position coach or his OC. Demetrius Bell, Vincent Shavers, and Larry Tarver are three guys that we haven't seen that are all here that get talked about. Banks is the real deal. I mean, he's a guy that can stretch the field, but I think is a mature guy that's going to make that tough catch. Nebraska also has to win some 50-50 stuff. We could talk about Dylan Raiola, and he can throw the ball 40 yards downfield, but there's going to be 50-50 balls that Nebraska's wide receivers have to go win, okay? They might run the right route. They might be talented, but they got to win some 50-50 balls. And Banks has the look of that guy. I also think he elevates the work ethic in that room because he's a guy that is there whenever he needs to be to catch balls over and over and over. And they lacked that last year with that veteran guy in the wide receiver room that people could follow. Hey, guy has been there, done that, and he's done it at a high level. Man, if he's doing that, man, we can learn from this. And that's what Garrett McGuire was lacking last year, is that kind of guy in his room, because I don't think everybody was on the same page throughout the season in that room. This year, they have a veteran guy that has kind of taken over the role of follow me, this is what we're going to do because we're good enough. And I think you'll see attention on a guy like Banks or Naor. It's going to open up stuff for a Jalen Lloyd. Now, Demetrius Bell, I'm very intrigued to see. My only hesitation is, guys, he's a little bitty guy. He ain't very big. I mean, he's about 175 pounds. Is he 5'9"? So
5'9", 175 pounds. If we learned anything from Wan'Dale Robinson, that's a Big Ten running back right there.
Yeah, that is very true. So
well played.
Demetrius Bell will be out of here to here. So they've got a nice room, and then you combine the tight end, because I think Fedoni the mental part of Fedoni is in a good place, which should add to his growth. He needs to be better than he was last year, but the mental space is better for him, which I think will put him in a good spot. So I don't think they're worried about their pass catchers because they built a little bit of depth, and they all have different looks, but I think they're better at their craft and just simply running the right route and then putting yourself in a position where the quarterbacks can find you.
Gary Sharp said this here on a Saturday morning edition. Sorry, Schmidt, I don't mean to jump on your toes here, but I asked Jacob a question yesterday, and he also mentioned Vincent Shavers. I want to get back to him because he's an interesting story, interesting reports out of spring ball from him. But I want to stick with the offense here. A question I asked to Jacob Badilla yesterday, I want to get your thoughts on. If you can only have one for your freshman quarterback, would you rather have a 1-2 punch at running back that you can consistently turn to, hand the ball off, pick up yardage, or would you rather have a stable of wide receivers that can open up an explosive downfield passing attack like Matt Rule wants? If you can only have one of those two for your freshman quarterback, what are you picking? This is a personal question.
I would take running back because I think when things get a little sketchy, just turning and handing the ball off to a running back that can get you yards and move the sticks and not put everything on your plate, that's my preference. I would rather have.
Amen. Kraynak's going to rip the sweatshirt off, and it's going to be run the damn ball, shirt underneath.
It opens up play action, too.
Yep, it does.
Yeah.
Sharpie, I want to wrap with the offensive side of the ball. We're not getting ready yet.
Are you really going to wrap?
No, not at all.
Nobody wants that.
Let's talk guard.
G-Reg and the 7th floor crew coming up soon.
Lutoski and Makuza. Are those guys through a week plus in your early leaders at guard? You've got options. You've got Jenkins that's there as well. You got a lot of choices at guard. But are you hearing the same thing with Makuza and Lutoski? Lutoski's been around a long time. We know the Makuza story. With on the field, he's money, but it's doing everything outside of that from a standard standpoint. Do you like the interior moving forward?
Well, talking to my shadow, he advised me not to worry, said I should plant my tree and let it rise out of the fury. Looking at that position, the guard position is a work in progress. They do have some depth, and don't forget about Sam Sledge in there as well. Yeah. And he's made some progress, but he's still learning the position as Buckley. They need to figure some things out at guard. And it's still early. They're only 2 weeks into spring ball, but they have options. That's the thing about this team, and also on defense is they've constructed the roster into options. If the guy that they want or the guy they feel is best for that position doesn't live up to expectations, they can pivot to plan B, or they've got competition. But there's nothing definitely locked down at guard. I think Mazuka is a guy that they really like, that is kind of trying to fit into the Nebraska way of doing things. Of this is how we like our guards to play. This is what we expect. So I think from the guard standpoint, I've heard it's been a little bit choppy, but the rest of the offensive line has been okay. The thing about Teddy, so that's another story here. Teddy looks really good. I saw him last week. And he's got when you're 6'10", and you can't tell if a guy weighs 315 or if he weighs 295 or somewhere in between. But the thing I noticed in talking to him is he just is in a different spot. Like the way he looks at football. Like last year, he wasn't super healthy again, and he wasn't I don't think he was comfortable at his craft. And it showed. And we went, man, what happened to him? Well, just like Fedoni, for the first time in a while, he starts spring and he's not worrying about an injury. And he had that last year. This is the first time in 3 springs that Teddy Prohaska is not either battling an injury, rehab, out for spring. He actually is on the field. And I think that will help him as he gains confidence in his legs that they're not going to fail him, that then he can work on his job. So I think the tackles have been okay. Ben Scott is who he is. They got to figure out guard. And that'll play itself out because they have probably 5 guys battling for 2 guard spots.
Gary, last year was the Bryce Benhart redemption story on the right tackle. Like, that was kind of the story of the offensive line, the overarching theme. I think that I'll remember from the 2023 season along the offensive line was Bryce Benhart's redemption story. Another guy who could really use a redemption story is Turner Corcoran. Does he get a chance this season? Is he in that guard mix through spring here and into fall? What's your take on Turner Corcoran? Highly touted recruit. He hasn't lived up to it.
Yeah, and maybe he's he just needs some good stuff to go his way. Maybe because he gets out of the spotlight and he's not playing a prime position, he will be better. I don't know. He's got to have a good year. And if he doesn't, he's not going to play very much. But here's the other thing about Nebraska as a whole, guys. They don't have a lot of tackle depth. Now, they have some young guys like Grant Bricks looks the part. And, I'm glad that he's on campus for the spring. But they need to develop the tackles. But I would like to see Corcoran at some point have a good stretch of football. I just don't know, man. It's been a rough last couple of years of being consistently week after week good, and that train hasn't left the station. But boy, that train is smoking, and the conductor's about to hit go, and you may not have a ticket secured yet.
Well, the thing I'll say about Turner is, man, that dude's been jostled around where it's, he's making the move to guard this spring, and he's going to be playing there, and then 4 weeks into the season, well, we're out of tackle depth, so we're moving Turner back to tackle, and now he's going to be a swing guy. He's playing on the right. He's been jostled around through his whole Husker career, never been able to get steady. I'd like to see him have a chance to be one position, whether it's left guard, left tackle, right tackle. I'm not sure where they're going to put him. That's been the story of Turner Corcoran's career, is we don't know where he's going to be on the offensive line. I just want to see him get a chance to be at one position for spring, through winter conditioning, knowing what you're going to be in January, and being 9 months of development in that one spot, and see what he looks like come fall camp. I'd
settle
like
in, get confident.
Really he hasn't gotten the chance to settle in and get confident.
Here's the thing, though, about Corcoran you got to keep in mind. And when you're battling for a position and people are doubting you, man, that foot injury is not easy to overcome. And I don't know that, even if we get to fall camp, Corcoran is completely healthy from his foot injury, and that doesn't help. He needs to be on the field, working reps at a new position. But you're absolutely right, Elijah. He's been bounced back and forth, and it's kind of been the story of Nebraska's offensive line has been Turner Corcoran. You got a guy that you really liked. He's one of the highest rated recruits Nebraska's ever brought in, and he really hasn't lived up to that billing where you could turn over a tackle spot to him and say, that's our tackle for the next 3 years.
They just threw him into the deep end too soon. And
I will say,
all there is to it.
And I will, and he needs to be healthy. I think Donnie can be good for him because we're seeing Donnie's been good for a couple of offensive linemen where we were like, I don't know about that guy. And Donovan Ryle is going, no, I know about that guy. Corcoran would seem to be that guy, and I don't know what the disconnect is. Sometimes it doesn't translate, to playing in college, being consistently good at your job, and then you throw in an injury, and the train keeps moving, unfortunately.
Gary, go for it, Mark, please.
I was gonna switch over to defense, and
that's where I was gonna go to.
Well, and you think back to Nebraska's strongest teams, there is usually a dude right up the gut, or two, right in the middle. You go back, Malik Collins, the Davis twins, Ndamukong Suh, the Peter brothers, got Carricker, I know, played end, but they'd slide him in. You have a couple guys now in Nash. Is it Hutmaker or Hutmacher, by the way? I feel like I hear both all of a sudden. It used to be Hutmacher.
Nut Smasher.
Okay, Nut Smasher. Let's go with that. So you got Nut Smasher, and then
That's so good every time Kraynak says it.
No, but you got a pair of guys in the middle that are presumably healthy. Do you think they become kind of the twin terrors in there that are able to legitimately pressure the quarterback and finish the job? I felt like they pressured but didn't finish the job a lot last year.
Yep.
Do you think Nebraska has that potential in the middle, up the gut on defense, and what does that do for the defense, if so?
Well, if they're able to pressure the quarterback and get to the quarterback, it does a lot for your guys on the outside. Here's how I look at, and those two are in a good spot. I mean, Ty Robinson looks bigger than he did last year. And if Nebraska wants to get to where they are talking about being the best defense, that's got to be a defense that has some bona fide all-conference guys, first team, and it's probably got to have an All-American here or there. I mean, there are very few defenses in college football that have sat atop that mountain that have not had like all-conference guys. And Nebraska kind of has a team defense, TEAM. They have a lot of guys that contribute at all three levels. But those two guys up front, you're right, Mark, if they can get pressure and they can collapse the pocket and they can allow guys on the outside to go get the quarterback, that's great. Nebraska needs to sack the quarterback. There were times last year they were getting home, but they weren't getting somebody down.
Yeah.
How many times have we talked about that?
Frequently.
And so all of a sudden the ball is out at the last moment and the quarterback's going down and you're like, whoa, they might only got 5 yards, but we could have had them for 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So that's like the next step in the involvement is Nebraska's sack numbers need to go up because Nebraska, as you guys were talking with Brandon about turnovers, Nebraska's havoc plays need to go up as well. They create havoc in the pocket, so it's a pass that's thrown and you've got people in your face that ends up in an interception. I think they need to create more of that. But those two guys definitely, I think, are primed for a big year. But let me ask you guys, if they want to be the number one defense, and I'm listening because you can talk it into existence, and they don't have to do a lot of teaching this spring into the fall because they have a lot of guys that are familiar and comfortable with their roles, is who is that potential All-American on this defense that will emerge and we will be talking about in December? They are getting, we're getting emails about blank has been named to the Walter Camp All-American Award.
Singleton.
To get to that level, you've got to have a couple of those guys.
I look at the secondary. I'm with Schmidt on Deshaun Singleton. I think that's a good pull. I look at Tommy really Hill, with how Tommy Hill is able to generate turnovers. Like All-Americans, you have journalists, let's be honest, journalists are kind of stupid sometimes. Like if some guy can go out there and get 10 interceptions in a season, you're on your way towards an All-American bid. I think those guys are two good options. And if you look, I don't want to say a couple years down the road because that's not the question, but a couple years down the road, I think you got some guys in the D-line and Linhart and Princewell that could be All-American candidates. And that's not the question, but I just want to throw that in there.
I think Robinson and Hutmacher, I don't think you rule them out yet. I don't think they're favorites, but I don't think you rule them out. Whenever they come out with like the top 80 list that they always come out with for every position, they should be on that. Tommy Hill, of course. Gifford, because I think he can put up pretty good numbers. I think they will. I think
he just does it all, though. I mean, he does it all.
Yeah, to be an All-American, you need to put up gaudy numbers in one of the statistical categories, tackles, takeaways, something like that.
I think a big game.
Well, I think there's a thing about playing team defense, and for a team that went 5-7, they had 8 games where they allowed 17 and under. I think another part of their excitement about being the best defense is a lot to do with the quarterback position, guys. I truly believe that they are fired up for a year on defense because they trust the quarterback position will not be a turnover factory and will actually help out the defense. And so that probably adds to your excitement of, man, we like what we got. Last year we were 11th in total defense, but we didn't always get complementary offense. We think it'll be different this year. Man, that's why we think we can be even better. I think for the candidates I would look at are up front because at the end of the day, Nebraska defensively can have 15 guys that we rattle off and go, man, that's a good player. But they need a cut stopper, okay? They need that guy in the fourth quarter against Iowa on Black Friday when Iowa's starting to lean on you and they're running downhill at the end of the game and you're trying to keep them out of field goal range to win a game. Who's that guy that makes the play, that makes the stop? Who is that guy that stands out above everybody else and says, not today, fellas? They missed that guy on a continuous basis last year. They had flashes throughout games where Reimer would make big plays or Robinson would make big plays or Hutmacher would make big plays or back in the secondary. Who is that guy that stands up on a weekly basis and says, I'm the guy. in the fourth quarter and makes a pick, jars the ball loose, something like that.
Gary Sharp's with us, the Iron Horse, Hail Varsity Weekend. You've got candidates, but can more folks show up to that party? Can you have multiple cut stoppers?
Yeah, you can. And let me throw this out to you three, because I think I'm fascinated by this guy's Nebraska career. Let's go around the room here, and let's play one-word game. We'll start with Mark. Tommy Hill. Give me one word on Tommy Hill's career at Nebraska. From when he arrived to this week, talking about him locking up one of the cornerback spots, and this guy might be playing in the NFL.
Yeah, reversal, redemption. Yeah.
Redemption's a good word. I like that. Redemption's a good word for his career, and he's got to put it all together next season, but that would probably be the word I'd go with as well. Redemption's great.
Yeah, you look at the Tommy Hill that showed up in Dublin, Ireland, versus the Tommy Hill that you saw against Iowa, and there's still one play where he's breaking on the ball to the east sideline.
How about Tommy Hill? Didn't Tommy Hill get benched against Georgia Southern?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
I remember that correctly.
Moved positions. He
moved
positions
after
that.
To offense. They're like,
because
he
was Lamar Jackson's style. He was Lamar Jackson, early Lamar Jackson style business decision, not tackling anybody. That's why.
Buy-in. That's my word. He bought in. He bought into what he was being told by this staff.
Well, okay, so isn't he like the poster child of the Matt Rule era? A guy that was here before who they didn't know what to do with. And also, I don't think Tommy was helping out the former staff. I think they were. they had their lines crossed, okay, on what it took to get on the field, and then he moves to wide receiver. He's not happy at wide receiver. They just moved him to wide receiver, and they really didn't tell him what to do. They just said, "You're athletic enough. We're going to put you with the wide receivers on this Tuesday in practice." And he went, "Okay." I mean, his final game of the game in Iowa, he kind of like wandered around the field going, okay, what do I do? I'm supposed to play wide receiver. But he didn't leave. So the new staff came in, and as they're evaluating guys, he stood out to them on film. And they were like, okay, there's something there. He just needs to be coached and really coached hard, but a trust factor needs to be built up. And look where he was last year. And he still made some plays where you hopped on the Tommy Hill experience and you went, whoa, this is a roller coaster that I'm going to get sick on. But then it goes and you go, oh, I like this roller coaster. To the way he developed throughout the year, to Matt Rule said NFL. And this week they said, he's our cornerback one, and Bly Hill might grab the other spot. I just think it's an interesting look at how Matt Rule looks at players and puts them in the best position to succeed. And I think there's some younger guys that they're doing that with that you got to keep an eye on. But I'm fascinated by the Tommy Hill experience because he could be a guy that really, really flashes for you this year on a consistent basis where I don't have to tweet out, oh, it's the Tommy Hill experience, because he goes from making a great play to here's a interception right into the palm of my hands and I drop it.
Schmidt, really fast here. We need to get James in a marketing executive room or something like that. He's got a great idea. If Tommy Hill and Bly Hill start at corners, would our safeties be the valley of death between two hills? Get him in a marketing room.
So good.
Get him on Mad Men. James, that's fantastic. To add to this, you mentioned Bly Hill. There's two names on defense. I don't want to say they've come out of nowhere, but for maybe some people that are not big on the recruiting talk, they've kind of come out of nowhere. Bly Hill is a transfer coming up from Division II. I think the Philadelphia area. He came in a late, I don't want to say a surprise edition, but a little bit. Then you also have Vincent Shavers, another guy who flipped late. He got his Nebraska offered like 2 or 3 days before signing day. He decommits from Miami, comes to Nebraska. Both of those guys making some waves in spring football from what I'm hearing. Bly Hill and Vincent Shavers. What are you hearing about those two from two guys that go from signing day, I guess, you go, wow, that's a plus. You don't know what you're going to get from these guys, to two guys that are coming in and really impressing early. What do you hear about them, Gary?
So let me start with Bly Hill. He's long at 6'3", and the fact that they are are playing him on working him on field and boundary shows that they believe that he can do a lot. There's something about Bly Hill when he was first plucked out of the portal, and he's from St. Francis, and we go, man, was he playing Catholic League football in Philadelphia?
Dude, I was literally just looking that up.
So, but here's what it tells me is that the Nebraska staff, and remember, Evan Cooper is a really good coach, and he's got a good eye for talent on the recruiting trail of guys that fit what he wants to do. Bly Hill was a priority. Bly Hill was one of the first players that they contacted out of the portal. Okay? That tells you a lot. Wasn't, okay, let's just throw a wide net out there. And they don't do that. They're very concerted on who they go after in the portal because they want those guys to come in, be here for at least 2 years. That second year when it pops, Bly Hill's going to pop in the first year. So he was a priority right away. And I don't think it surprises Evan Cooper on what he's done. But he's 6'3", he's long, and he's got the skill set where he can play boundary or field corner. And I think he's going to be a starting corner. I think it's going to be the Hill squared against UTEP. And he's a good player. Don't look at where he came from. He's a good player that we do this in college basketball. Oh, they just needed a chance at a higher level. That's him. The guy can play football. Now with Shavers, that inside linebacker spot is kind of up for grabs. I think Thompson the adjustment is taking a little bit longer. And it's weird because all the film I ever saw on Thompson, he was playing outside. But Vincent Shavers, I think it helps that he's here on campus in the spring. But where he's playing, where they want him to play a linebacker, that position is wide open. But I think Bly Hill will be somebody 3 weeks from today. Let's watch and see what he looks like and how comfortable he is playing cornerback.
Sharpie, the reality is this. You've got trust in the coaches. The kids that are coming in, they believe what they're being taught. The buy-in's there. But you have that example you're talking about. This is somebody that if you do what we say, this is where you can go and look at the payoff. So it's not just empty words. The other part of it too is, these guys are doing a hell of a job at Lille. It feels like projecting where someone can be, right? Yeah. And here's what our vision is with X, Y, or Z. They see it and it's working out. And that's what was so good for so many years about Nebraska is Neil Smith's the example, right? Let's put some weight on you, Neil. Let's move you inside. Yeah. You're fast. Go kill a quarterback. And I think there's some of that with Nebraska and this staff right now where they just have a really good eye. And so far, so good with the buy-in. It isn't perfect. You got to go win ball games, but it's really kind of coming together, I think.
Yeah, it's coming together quicker than I think. I think you listen to Rule, and he knows they have something. They need more. I mean, they still got to accumulate more talent, but I think they're definitely ahead of where they thought they would be in terms of the talent and the execution. Now they just need to show it on the field, and then they got to go win football games. I mean, that's the bottom line is they like how they built it up. Now when they get the opportunity again to play, you got to win those football games. But I will tell you also, so we raved about the defensive staff, and I think Tony White, a kind of a underlying aspect of how good he is, he's a great coach of coaches. Teaching the coaches on that defense and then giving them responsibility. I have also heard Glenn Thomas is a really good hire.
Yeah.
Glenn Thomas is going to be a really good hire for Nebraska with quarterbacks, and he came in at the right time with basically a quarterback room that was like Play-Doh and had not been constructed yet. I'm anxious to see Harburg throw the football because as we kind of got hints of, they have tinkered with his throwing motion. What will that mean? It's not going to mean that Harburg's going to be the starter, but it could give you a glimpse into how Glenn Thomas operates in a short amount of time. Everything we were saying about Harburg, he comes in and says, I see the same thing, then I've got a plan for you. So that's another little aspect through the first 2 weeks of camp is I've heard that Glenn Thomas resonates really well with his position coaches and also his voice on the offensive staff on just the eyeballs on what looks like good football.
Gary, let's switch quick to baseball off the heels of an absolute gem last night by Brett Sears. I mean, he was lights out. And for folks that maybe don't follow baseball as much or the Husker baseball team as much, that is a really good pitcher to watch. I mean, how quickly he works and how dialed in he is to the strike zone. The guy has 9 walks the whole year, Gary, in like 50 plus innings. That's absurd as a starting pitcher. And it just his ability to locate, he almost always goes up 0-1 on a batter. Like almost always throws a first pitch strike. 9 innings last night, complete game shutout. Nebraska picks up win number, I believe it's 22. So 40 is actually in sight, as it is for Creighton, who they lost to earlier this week. But your take on it's sort of like, how do you measure Big Ten defenses when you know in football, when you know that the offenses they face aren't that good? You can kind of say the same thing for baseball. So the Brett Sears train, considering the level of batter that he goes against regularly, super legit, or is he helped by the offense or lack thereof that he is doing this against?
Hey, Mark, you know baseball. I think he's legit. I think Nebraska has a Friday night starter, a legit Friday night starter. I mean, look at just going back recently, Cade Povich. I mean, we could rattle off the great Friday night starters in the history of Nebraska baseball. I think Brett is that way. I think he's pretty good, and he just needed some fine tuning. And Childress worked a little bit with him, but it's also the mental part of attacking the strike zone, throwing strikes, having confidence in more than just one pitch. Yeah. And he's also got a dog mentality, man. He didn't want to come out of the game last night.
No,
he's got a shutout. He's got a darn near perfect game. You know,
well, and he's after 100,
I'm not coming out of the game.
And after 100 plus pitches, he's still hitting 94 in the 9th inning, and he mixes that, goes down to say 75 on his curve, so he's got that range, and he can just locate all of it. It's ridiculous.
I think it's important today for Nebraska to not let last night be a standalone. They need, because in the Big Ten, which isn't going to give you a lot of help, because Nebraska, Rutgers, Maryland are the 3 that get mentioned the most in midseason, field of 64. You got to stack wins, and you can't let like Friday night just stand alone, and you struggle on Saturday, but hey, you bounce back on Sunday. They need to start stacking series wins. Last week was a good one. Creighton was they didn't match the energy right away. And I think Will said something on Thursday that reminded me of Van Horn. Nebraska got number 1 in the country going to College Station, and Van Horn gave this impassionate speech about we can be better than number 1. And there was a guy in the back of the bus who actually had a prominent role in that team, said, is there a higher number than number 1 in a poll? But the message was, don't get satisfied. Right. Will said that Will was not happy. Boy, they had a long discussion after the game on Tuesday with his team. He was disappointed. You're not going to win every game. He was disappointed that they didn't keep that intensity going. And some guys may have settled, hey, we won 10 in a row. Finally, we're ranked. Well, then you got beat. So he's done a good job of pushing the right buttons. And he did that on Thursday when he was talking to the media about his mindset. And then they matched it last night. I mean, that's a really, really good win. But to have a Friday night guy, ooh, man, that is a piece of comfort that Nebraska baseball we probably have taken for granted over the last few years.
You didn't even touch your bullpen last night.
No. So remember, you set up you moved up McConaughey to today, swapped with Christo because you were trying to figure out when you would need your bullpen. He gave them a great break last night. He gave them a victory, gave them a performance. But you're right, Mark. Nobody got off. Nobody picked up a glove and threw 100 pitches in the bullpen, getting ready to come in. So they're good for today.
They weren't even warming anybody up in the 7th. We walked by the bullpen, and they're all just chilling. You're like, man, they're really going to stick with them.
Yeah, that was a good bounce back for Nebraska last night. I mean, they need to. I still think for them to host, they're going to need to win the regular season in the Big Ten with a gaudy record because the conference isn't going to help you.
They got to get you like 38 probably, huh? Yeah, that's what I'm
and then the NCAA committee goes, oh, we have that one quota team in the Midwest that we give a regional to. That might be Nebraska.
Yep.
The Iron Horse with us, Gary Sharp. Sharpie.
Would have been nice to drink a beer last night, enjoying that at the ballpark, but
I know. Yeah, the old 90-10 split is not doable
What happened,
right now.
Schmitty? They used to play nice together.
I don't know. Should we warm up? Should we go to Arizona? Should we go to the Final Four? Garth, do you have us?
I'm on with you and Gary and Mark.
It's a Saturday morning reunion.
My gosh.
And Elijah, what am I, chopped liver?
Elijah stepped away for a moment. You back, Elijah? There you are.
I'm back.
How are you, dude?
Well, Elijah, my apologies.
You're all good. I'm kidding. You're all good.
Well, Schmitty, years ago, we did this Saturday morning show together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was actually your first co-host, replaced by Mark, who has had a much more long and distinguished tenure than I ever did on this particular show. But
you went to the NBA and the SEC, but yes, I love Mark.
I remember
my break's coming soon.
Some of my favorite shows with you throughout the years that we did the Saturday morning show were the Final Four shows.
Yes.
And in particular, I remember 2 years in a row, we had the privilege to interview Barry Collier, who was then the athletic director at Butler, hired Brad Stevens. Barry's actually, Coach Collier, I should say, is retiring this year. This is his last year at Butler. So I had fond memories of those Saturday morning shows from the Final Four. So thanks for letting me relive those to some extent today.
Well, I'm just happy you're in a non-windy climate as you're down there in Glendale. Garth Glissman with us, of course. Garth, standout Husker, and
standout would be a little bit of a misnomer.
Standout Husker football.
Maybe just Husker.
I will keep the standout. You're a standout athletically and academically. Of course, many years in the NBA.
Yeah,
now
Garth, it is student athlete. Student does come first.
The associate commissioner for men's basketball with the SEC. How many Bama fans are running rampant down there?
First Final Four in school history.
Yes.
So it's a special time for Alabama. I'll tell you, during the season, my job is to make sure that all SEC schools have a level playing field. And as you can imagine, in the passion with our fans and coaches, that we have spirited discussions with our coaches throughout the year, and we go through the highs and lows of the season. But then when the NCAA tournament rolls around, it's one of the rare times for people who work in a league office, like I've been doing for the last 8 years or so, we actually get to be fans again. And it's been special to watch Alabama's run. Last year, they had the number one seed, Brandon Miller, the best player in college basketball. I think a lot of Alabama fans expected the team to be here last year. It didn't work out, which is a reflection of the unique nature of March Madness, the one-and-done nature of the tournament, which is exhilarating for fans, oftentimes cruel for teams, and very different from where I just came from. The NBA, the playoff format, you have 4 rounds, 7-game series. And typically at the end of a 7-game series in the NBA, there's no doubt that the best team is advancing. There's, typically everything comes out in the wash throughout the course of a 7-game series. One-and-done tournaments, very different. Mm-hmm. Matchups, luck, the way the ball bounces on a particular day, whether there's an illegal screen called or not. Well, there's a lot of randomness involved in just one game. And so that, is part of the beauty of March Madness. I think that it's really become a national phenomenon. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you from, my perspective, like I said, coming from the NBA, seeing it now, we had 8 teams in the tournament this year, tied the Big 12 with the most teams in the tournament among all conferences. And so you get to go on the journey with all 8 teams. Alabama made it on Saturday, and I started feeling a little greedy because we still had Tennessee alive the following day against Purdue. And I can tell you, as excited as I was for Alabama when they won on Saturday, I hurt just as much for Purdue on Sunday. But it just speaks to the unique nature of March Madness. Great for fans, but can be heartbreaking at times for teams.
Hey,
Garth, go ahead, Sharpie. Go ahead.
So it's good to see you. One of these days, I'd like to see you not wearing a suit. like, go a little casual.
He sleeps in that thing.
I kid because I care. This is right in your wheelhouse, and you've gotten to know Coach Oates and what he's done at Alabama, actually what he's done throughout his career from Buffalo to Alabama. I mean, he's a really, really good coach. But what does it mean to you and other coaches that are sitting at home watching the Final Four that it was only about a decade ago that Nate Oates, just like you before you moved into your last couple of rows, Garth, were high school coaches? You got a guy that a decade ago was a high school coach in Nate Oates, and now he is coaching tonight in the Final Four. What does that mean?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Gary. And you and I'm fortunate to call you a friend, and you know how much my 8 years of coaching high school basketball in Nebraska meant to me.
Yep.
And that will always be a special chapter in my life. And the young men that I coached are still an important part of my life. You mentioned Nate Oates, and we'll talk about him in some detail. But in fact, 3 of the 4 head coaches at the Final Four were high school coaches. In the case of Nate Oates and Danny Hurley, they were high school coaches not that long ago. Nate finished up at Romulus High School in Metro Detroit about 11 years ago. Danny Hurley coached at St. Benedict's in New Jersey, where his dad was, obviously a long time legendary high school coach. Danny finished up around the same time frame as Nate. So, 12, 13 years ago, these guys were coaching high school basketball. Kevin Keats, the head coach of North Carolina State, he actually, it's been a while since he's been to the high school game. I actually competed against him when I was at prep school in New Hampshire. So
really?
I had one of my better games against him. So he's been in the college game for longer than Nate and Danny. But I think it's a really positive sign it's a healthy sign for the profession, Gary, in that sports are a meritocracy. May the best man or woman win. May the best man or woman rise to the top. And when you have high school coaches, and on top of that, Nate Oates was a D3 guy from Wisconsin. It's not like he was born with a silver spoon. This is a guy who had to earn it every step of the way. And it's great for the coaching profession. It's a reminder that sports are a true meritocracy. And I think it should be a sign of encouragement for high school coaches across the country. And Nate talked about that yesterday during his press conference. He said, look, there are a lot of high school coaches out there that were really good that I coached against. The only difference is they never caught a break, and I did, as Nate said. You got to be ready for your break when it comes. But I'm proud that 3 of the 4 head coaches were longtime high school coaches. Again, I think it's very healthy for the profession and should be motivating to high school coaches across the country.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Garth, you had mentioned just how in tournaments things can kind of go haywire. Here, Alabama had lost 3 of their last 5 in the regular season, and then they dropped their only game in the SEC. So it's not like they came into the NCAA tournament hot. What do you think it is about them and about Oates' approach that has allowed them to have such success and find themselves in the Final Four? And God, maybe 1% of brackets would have predicted that.
There are actually some metrics that speak to momentum heading into the tournament. And quantitatively, Alabama had among the least momentum of all teams in the country heading into the tournament. And then, you win your first game and you get some confidence, and here they are. Nate Oates is an elite coach. And I think for people outside of the SEC that maybe aren't as familiar with him, perhaps they're familiar with his story, high school coach, but he is on the front end of innovation in the way that basketball is going to be played in the future at the college level, particularly as it relates to offensive basketball and offensive efficiency. Nate was a high school math teacher. He taught algebra, statistics, geometry, and Nate sees the world and he sees the game in numbers. And when you think about Nate's system is a lot like many NBA teams in that it's predicated on analytics, math, the expected value of a shot, which places a premium on 3-pointers and paint twos. Gary, you and I have talked a lot about, the youth and club basketball scene over the years. And if we have any parents that are listening to today's show or young players that are listening to today's show, a lot can be learned from watching the way that Alabama plays. Now, they're up against the juggernaut today and UConn. I do think Alabama has a puncher's chance based on how they shoot the three. But setting that aside, watch how Alabama plays today. Watch how they prioritize three-pointers and paint twos, and then understand that is the future of basketball. That's how the game is already played in the NBA, and that's how it's going to increasingly be played in college. Why? Because it's math. The expected value, when you think about, three is worth more than two, and the percentages assigned to each shot, the expected value of a paint two and a three from a simple math perspective is higher than, say, a mid-range two. And so what does that mean for parents and young players? That means if you want to be successful going forward in basketball, you need to be able to shoot the three, and you have to be able to finish in the lane. When I was growing up, you were taught to shoot layups a certain way, and there was a discipline to how you shot layups. If it was a right-handed layup, it was off your left foot. Or a lot of coaches taught getting off 2 feet in the paint for balance purposes. Today's game requires far more skill and creativity when finishing in the lane. You have to be able to make awkward body layups. You have to be able to make layups off the wrong foot, maybe a left-hand layup off the left foot. You have to be able to finish with floaters over shot blockers. The game is evolving. Nate Oates is at the front of that innovation. And so I think that people outside of the SEC footprint perhaps just don't have the appropriate level of appreciation for how elite Nate is. And I think what makes Nate special is he combines that analytical mindset with confidence, swagger, competitiveness, the relatability of a guy who was in a high school classroom, understands what it's like to connect with young people. All of that together makes Nate elite. And if you're around him on a daily basis, to bring it back to your question, you can understand why a guy whose team didn't finish particularly strong in the regular season was able to get it together and go on a run in the NCAA tournament.
Garth's with us here on the weekend edition of Hail Varsity. Of course, the associate commissioner for men's basketball. Elijah, you had something?
Yeah, I just want to ask, with this Bama team, what kind of juice are you seeing from Bama fans? I saw a Twitter poll yesterday where Bama fans were asked, would you trade a 4-year college football playoff drought for a national championship this season in basketball? The results were shockingly close from what you've grown to expect from Bama fans and how much they love football.
So 50-50
it was
versus
50-50.
Hell no?
It was 50-50. So, Garth, what type of juice are you seeing with this basketball team with Alabama fans and a school that is traditionally thought of as a football school?
One of the reasons I feel like I've been at the SEC for 8 or 9 months. I started in August. It's been a really good cultural fit for our family. We lived in New York City for 7.5 years, depending on how you want to count the pandemic. And so we feel like we can be happy as a family anywhere. But Alabama feels right. It's a cultural fit, and the reason I say that is college athletics mean a lot in the state of Nebraska. There's a reason you guys are up early on a Saturday morning talking, Husker sports, college sports. It's the same way in Alabama. My wife called me yesterday. Obviously, I'm in Phoenix for the Final Four. She dropped our 5-year-old daughter off at preschool in Birmingham, Alabama yesterday, the largest city in the state. And all the teachers and administrators wanted to talk about was Alabama's Final Four run. So it matters to the people in the state of Alabama. Alabama, like Nebraska, is a football school. But since Nate Oates has arrived, when you total the SEC championships, both in the regular season and conference tournament championships, Alabama's won more championships and SEC championships, I say, in men's basketball than any other SEC school. So they've grown to like having some success in basketball. I think Nate embraces the fact that Alabama's a football school. But he wants to make it, he talks about it being a championship school. And there is a championship culture at Alabama. And I can tell you that this run in March Madness means a lot to Alabama fans. It means enough, as I said, for my wife to hear about it when she's dropping my daughter off at preschool.
Garth, I want to ask you, you are a proud Nebraskan, and I love seeing you when you come back. But your name, every major media outlet had Garth Glissman as a top 3 name for the opening of the Nebraska athletic director job shortlist. What that mean to you? What's your reaction to that? It was 3-4 weeks ago.
Well, that's a loaded question. So let me try to give it the appropriate context. First, I want to congratulate Troy Dannon on being the new athletic director at the University of Nebraska. I can tell you from working in the industry, there was a lot of interest from sitting athletic directors, not only at Power 5 schools, but even within Power 2 schools. There was a lot of interest among sitting ADs. It seems clear to me that Nebraska, their first choice was Troy, and so Troy should be congratulated, and I'm excited to see what he'll do in his tenure at Nebraska. I also think that Trev Alberts deserves a lot of credit. Trev left the job a lot better than he found it. And I think Trev deserves a lot of credit for the interest level in the job. Now, there's been some structural changes in college athletics since the last time the AD job at Nebraska opened that have made the job more attractive. But the leadership that Trev provided, and you talk about wanting to leave a job better than you found it. Trev Alberts left the Nebraska athletic department better than he found it, and he deserves a lot of credit for why there was such interest at a high level in the job. And I'll also say that time has, time doesn't necessarily heal all wounds, but time has a lot of healing properties. And my hope that is in time, Nebraska can look back, Nebraskans and Husker fans can look back on the many positive aspects of Trev's tenure. As it relates to my own connection to the search, Schmidt, I'll just be very candid. I was not involved in the search. Hiring decisions start in one of 2 ways. Either the employer reaches out or the applicant, prospective applicant, reaches out to express their interest. And in this particular case, for a lot of reasons, primarily that I had started at the SEC in August. I had made a commitment to Commissioner Greg Sankey. I didn't think it would be appropriate for me to initiate outreach in this case. I don't want to pretend that I was, living under a rock. My parents both live in the Lincoln area. My parents consume local media. So obviously,
Garth, you're in the paper again.
I'm hearing from them and family and friends. So I wasn't naive to what was going on back home. Mm-hmm. But as I said, I made a decision that given where I was at in my life, the commitment that I had made to the Southeastern Conference, the commitment that I had made to Greg Sankey, that I didn't think that it would be appropriate for me to initiate outreach. And then once I made that decision, there was not another decision for me to make. And I say that as a compliment to the way the university ran the search, Troy Dannon being their first choice. Troy has tremendous credentials, prior relationships with Fred and Matt. So I'll always root for Nebraska, always care about Nebraska. But I'm also incredibly thankful for the job that I have at the SEC. I was enjoying my job at the NBA. I felt like I was making a significant impact at the NBA, but I took the job at the SEC primarily for 2 reasons. One, I felt like it was an opportunity to impact college sports at a macro level at a very important time in really the history of college sports. And in that respect, there's still a lot more that I want to do with the SEC, with college sports writ large. And then also, I've been very open about how much I had studied and admired Greg Sankey over the years. And so the decision to go work for him was not one that I took lightly. I am incredibly thankful to be working with Greg Sankey, to be learning from Greg Sankey. He went out on a limb to hire me, and I want to prove him right for hiring me. And there's still more for me to do to make that happen.
Garth Glissman is with us. Garth, you have a front row seat since August to some of the tectonic shifts that are happening in college athletics. And if you look at the history of college athletics in a relatively short amount of time, things have really been upended when it comes to NIL, when it comes to player freedom to transfer. And it's often described as the Wild West, right? That's what everybody says. Just like, no one knows how to regulate it. Nobody knows what the future of it is. 2-part question. one, behind the scenes, is it equally sort of Wild West where there's a lot of plans and a lot of ideas on how to maybe wrangle and move forward, but nothing's really sticking yet? And then two, the optimist would say a lot of these shifts potentially favor schools like Nebraska, who have incredible fan support, great facilities, affiliated with a great conference. Just curious on your thoughts on either of those two.
Great observations and points, Mark. I have a bit of a unique perspective in that I just spent 7.5 years at the NBA. One of the last major projects that I worked on at the NBA was the latest collective bargaining agreement that was reached in the summer of 2023. And for those who aren't as familiar with professional sports, the collective bargaining agreement is a bilateral contract between the owners, which are represented by the league office, and then the players, which are represented by the Players Association. And those two parties come together to form a contract that define the terms and conditions of not only employment, but how the industry, the NBA in that case, will operate. And so I have a different perspective, being, I've always loved college sports, but the bulk of my professional career in sports has been in pro sports. And one of the biggest differences between pro and college sports is that in pro sports, you have a very clean ecosystem, in the sense that the commissioner answers to the owners, but then within that, there's really no limitations within the context of the CBA on what can be accomplished within the system. College athletics is a very fragmented space. And a lot of the change in college athletics has been driven by litigation in the judicial system. That doesn't happen in pro sports because all of the parties involved in professional sports, as part of the collective bargaining agreement in the NBA or NFL Constitution and bylaws, they waive their rights to invoke the judicial system. And if there are any disputes, they have to be solved internally, either through internal dispute resolution processes or worst case scenario arbitration. So it's actually been, external forces, primarily courts, to a lesser degree, state and state legislators, to be more specific, that have driven the change in college athletics. So as a result of this very fragmented space, Mark, everybody has ideas. And whereas in the NBA, really the only ideas that mattered were the commissioners or the Players Association, because they had a right to come together and negotiate that bilateral contract. In college athletics, you have to listen to a variety of stakeholders. Yeah. And so the fragmented nature of college athletics makes for some significant challenges in terms of adapting and evolving and making the industry-wide changes that professional sports leagues can make on a dime. And so therein lies the challenge for college sports as an enterprise. It's the fragmented governance that underlies a lot of the issues. But you talked about being an optimist, Mark, and that's why I'm so excited about the future of college sports. And I'm a traditionalist in the sense that I feel like young people can learn so much from the student-athlete experience. I'm a traditionalist in the sense that I witnessed firsthand as a young person what college athletics can do to bring people together from all walks of life, to inspire communities, to inspire young people. I am the person that I am today because I grew up outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, outside of, or close to the University of Nebraska's campus, and learned at a young age to dream big, to work hard. That if you work hard and you overcome adversity, that good things can happen in the end. I learned all of those things being an observer of Husker athletics. So when I talked about why I signed up to work for the SEC and to work for Greg Sankey, I want to be a part of preserving all that is right with college athletics for future generations. And so in spite of all of the challenges, which I think I have a pretty unique understanding of, because I was just part of a really clean ecosystem where challenges can be addressed in a much more efficient manner. In spite of all of those challenges, I'm bullish about the future of college sports. I'll tell you, behind the NFL, college football is America's second most watched sport, and college basketball is America's third most watched sport. College sports have a special place in this country. They have a special way of bringing people together, of lifting up young people. And I want to be a part of that and preserving all of the positive attributes of college athletics for future generations.
Yeah.
Garth, we'll wind it down here, partner. It's been a party this morning to reunite the weekend edition, and I love it. And you're in Arizona. It's Final Four time. It's UConn. It's Bama later. It's Purdue and NC State as part of the Final Four. Last thought, just from a Husker perspective, were you on hand to see Keisei Mania, or were you doing other duties, or were you just limbering up for that slam dunk competition?
So when Keisei was in the midst of, first of all, what a showman.
No, big time.
I mean, not only is he a really good player, but he has a sense of the moment, and he's a showman and great representative of the University of Nebraska. I was in the midst of UConn-like travel issues at that time. For those of you who are basketball fans, you know that UConn ran into some travel issues getting to the Final Four, and I did as well. So I was, when Keisei was on his run there in the three-point challenge, somewhere in the vicinity of the Atlanta airport, hoping that I was going to be able to get on the last flight to Phoenix that night so I could get to my meetings early Friday morning. So I only saw it after the fact on social media.
Sure.
Yep.
Well,
Garth, we love you, brother.
Really fast, you talked about the importance in modern college or modern basketball of the three-point shot and finishing inside the lane. With that in mind, you were a guy that was around the NBA for a long time. Does Keisei get a shot, whether it be in Summer League, whether it be in G League, to make a pro career here? I think there's a prevailing opinion that he's got the backup plan of Japan, playing professionally there whenever he wants it. Does he get a shot in the NBA?
So Keisei has actually been a part of the NBA system for a while. The NBA has been for many years very forward-thinking about growing the game internationally. Roughly 25% of NBA players are foreign-born, and they've done that through a series of global academies and camps that are called Basketball Without Borders. So Keisei has been a part of the NBA system and participated in the Basketball Without Borders camps. And one of my former NBA colleagues reminded me that Keisei was actually at the kind of Basketball Without Borders All-Star camp when the All-Star game was in Charlotte. So he's, in the NBA system, on the NBA radar. In terms of what that means for whether he'll get a shot at the next level, I will tell you that there's never been a better time for Keisei or a player like him to make the NBA than right now, because of the value placed on three-point shooting. So I do think he'll get a look. There's also the G League, which is a developmental opportunity for players who maybe aren't immediately NBA players, but they're fringe guys and they can earn their way into the league. I think his challenges are well documented. He's undersized. Can he defend at the NBA level? He'll have to answer all those questions. But because he shoots it so well, he's at least going to get an opportunity. Whether he pursues domestic professional opportunities or goes back home to Japan and makes a ton of money, that'll be for him to decide. But an incredible showman who had an incredible career at the University of Nebraska. And he's going to, wherever it is, he's going to make money playing basketball for a long time.
Yep.
Garth, we'll let you get on with your day. But, brother, thanks for checking in from the Final Four with us and talking some ball.
Well, I can promise you that this segment has meant a lot more to me than it has any of you. So thank you for having me on today. You filled my cup. Much love, and have a great Saturday.
Gary, do you want to show G-Unit your cup?
Oh. So if you can read.
We finish how we started.
Something about fair weather fans.
So Bo Pelini had a famous off-the-record chat after the Ohio State game in 2011.
Leaked audio.
The audio was released, and somebody turned it into a coffee mug for me. So if you'd like to read that there, Garth.
I don't have great eyesight because apparently I missed out on the fact that Elijah was back in his chair at the beginning of the segment. Again, my apologies, Elijah. I can't see super well, but I see some profanities on your coffee cup that I'm just going to
keep it moving.
Pretend like I didn't see and keep it moving.
Well, Garth, we have a great coffee mug for you. It's the Hail Varsity Radio coffee mug. We'll send you a copy. You got to use it in all your swanky SEC meetings. Make sure everybody knows what the best radio show around is. We'll send you one or something. I don't know.
Well, thanks for letting me spread the word.
Parting gift.
Well, I appreciate you guys having on somebody from enemy territory. So thanks again, and have a great Saturday.
Appreciate you,
Garth, you take care, bud. See ya.
Thanks, Garth. Thanks.
There he is. Garth Glissman.
So crazy that Nebraska is going to join the SEC and Garth's going to lead that charge.
No.
It's really something. It's really, really something.
Garth's the last interview ever with any of us, right? No, but good to hear from him. Yeah. Sharpie, thanks for the overtime this morning, man.
Oh, no problem. Hey, I've through you actually, Schmitty. I've gotten to know Garth, and we become pretty close. When his family when COVID hit, his family moved back to Omaha. And, Garth was kind of still in New York City. And so we spent a lot of time together. So I'm a big fan. The day that Trev left was Garth's birthday. So there were a lot of people from the 402 were texting him happy birthday. And then we're following it up with, so what are you going to do? Yeah.
Wow.
And he said, I'm going on Feinbaum.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say it right now. He's positioning himself to. It wouldn't have been a stretch for him to be the AD this time around, but he's if he wants it, he's positioning himself to be Dannon whenever Dannon decides to leave, which ADs seem to leave every couple of years.
Well, at this point,
he's really positioning
himself. We can talk about Garth
he's
overqualified for an AD spot.
Well, no, that's just it. I mean,
it depends on what you want to do, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking. He is of the ilk of a conference commissioner.
Totally. But does he want that, or does he want to come back to Nebraska and lead? Right? Like, it just all depends on what you want to do. He's positioned himself, though, to be a legitimate candidate.
I think his last two jobs have been wheelhouse jobs of what he can offer to young people when he was with the NBA, and now what he can offer to, the SEC has gotten better in basketball, and he comes along at the right time with his basketball background, whether it be the front office or how everything else works. I love Garth. I think he's in a great spot, and he's working for the most powerful man in college athletics right now. So his ceiling is unlimited when you work for Greg Sankey. But it's cool. He's a former Husker that has gone on and done big things, and who knows what happens down the road.
And Garth is the proof that there is a path from sports talk radio to the AD chair of the school that you're covering.
There's employment afterwards.
There is a possibility that you can go from sports talk radio to athletic director of said school you cover. I mean, that's a wonderful thing.
It does help if you have a law degree. That also.
If you make partner at QTech Rock, you're good.
Yeah,
right.
That's that, right now. But hey, the reason I bring it up, think Kevin Warren, right? Kevin Warren, Big Ten commissioner. He kind of figures out it's not for him. He goes back to the NFL. He becomes a team level president in the NFL. I'm just saying it depends on what you want to do with your life. Not saying that one's better than the other, but he might prefer that one day. He might say, you know what, I just want the AD job at Nebraska, and I'll go into retirement like that.
Here's the thing: his wife Katie's awesome. His two kids are the best, and think about it: New York, Omaha, now Birmingham.
Yep.
They're settling down and just gonna live life for a little bit. But I mean,
sure,
the opportunity there, and it's just amazing. And Garth's story from the NBA reaching out to him via LinkedIn, as he's doing law work, as he's coaching Parkview Christian. He was just incredible. And the NBA always loved folks, and he fit it to a T. Law background, but athletic background. How many guys do you know that are a partner in a law firm in 3 years or whatever it was, that also played quarterback for a nationally ranked football team and also played basketball for a team in a Power Five? I mean, think about this combination. Oh, and then by the way, I coach high school.
Yeah. I think it's similar to us. I mean, I think we all took Comms Law 386 and
I got an
played at the rec center. So yeah.
Wow.
I wish I would have paid attention to that class.
Comms Law 386.
Well, enjoy the Final Four today. Appreciate you, Sharpie.
I took that class. Halfway through that class is March 13th, 2020. when everything shuts down and goes remote. Let me tell you what, there is nothing worse than taking a law class over Zoom. That was in one ear, out the other, and you get to the test and you go, oh my God. Yeah, no, don't recommend that one at all. But
hey, I appreciate you guys. Remember
we'll see you, bud.
Remember to live, laugh, punt, and make sure your feet are set on a screen.
Amen. Yeah. Old Gino, he was fired up post.
One quick thing on that, because if you are dabbling on Twitter and the debate on that call, Paige Beckers handled that perfectly in the post-game press conference.
Yep. It's not one play. Paige was stand up, and salute her with her answer. It was big time. Sharpie, we'll see you this weekend, brother. Appreciate you.
Guys.
All right, Kraynak, be good.
Hey, I got Creighton Butler baseball today. Going to go watch that one. So full report. I figure we could spend the whole first hour on that next week.
Why not? Because there's spring football.
Yeah. Yep.
Be good.
Perfect.
Elijah, love you much. Appreciate you guys.
I'm off to the baseball diamond as well, but I'm umpiring, so it's less fun than getting some beers and brews in the ballpark.
Windy, brother. Get the chapstick. Get the chapstick.
4 o'clock on Monday with Hail Varsity. See you then.